All right, so over the weekend with a Stack Overflow, this is still kind of
Still not impressed.
still what?
Nothing.
It's still too big.
No, I'm just talking about it.
Oh, this is something new. All right, so here's them. This works now. So building up the body like last time, we are returning the body from this function. So that seemed to be the fix. Before, we were trying to do this TWIML message inside of here. Now we're having this thing return the body, which actually I think was kind of what you were suggesting.
Yeah.
I guess I just didn't know how to use that return value.
Yeah, I wasn't exactly sure how to use it in JavaScript either.
Yeah. So it's returning the body, and then we had tried something like this last time, but this catches that return value. And then we're able to do this. And then ultimately end the call. I'm not sure which of these two was the fix. If the fix was calling it in here, or the fix was actually finishing the response. But in any case, it works now by bringing that stuff out of the asynchronous call like we were doing last time and into this then block. So we weren't too far off, it seems like, but in any case, that's the scoop. But yeah, for you, what you want to do is you want to print out what this last location says. Just display it here. Do a console.log last location so you see what kind of value is in there. Then you can compare it against that value.
Oh.
Because you want to know what this guy actually is in situations when the database is empty.
Yeah.
Once you know what he looks like, then you could say, does he, well, you don't want to have an single equal sign, you want to have a double equal sign.
I was playing with that.
Yeah, but you want to say, does this guy equal the thing you expect it to equal when there's nothing in there?
Okay.
So once you print him out, you should have a pretty good idea of what it looks like. And
Oh, okay. So it might not technically be null, it might be something else.
well, is it empty right now?
Yes, it is empty right now.
Is this giving an error?
Yeah. It doesn't like being complete.
I'm just going to get rid of that for right now then.
That's fine.
Actually, let's just do that. We should get a message in the log that says empty and then what it thinks last location should look like. Which is going to be the result of this. I actually think you might have to do it off of snap.val, not last location.
I thought that since we put in a variable that we wouldn't have to repeat it again.
Well, right, I'm just saying that this might not work,
Okay.
the dot last location. All right, go ahead and text.
Nothing.
Yeah, see, cannot read last location of null. So it's actually this guy that's null.
The snap value is null. So you want to say like if snap val equals null.
And since we know it's not a thing right now, let's just comment those out for a second. I think this should give us a null value, all lowercase. Okay, go ahead.
Nothing.
Well, you shouldn't get anything. Yep, empty is null. So then what you'd want,
Oh, I got the message.
but you would get this, the message that's in here.
Yeah.
But you didn't get it for the right reason.
Oh. Just came back late. That's interesting.
So you could ask if snap val is null, do that. Otherwise, we'll grab last location. We'll grab the timestamp. Don't need this, don't need this. All right, that should do that now. You're still not converting it back to a date.
No, I'm not, because I don't know. I need to talk to you about that. I'm not sure how it applies to the timestamp.
Okay, run it. Now you should get the right answer for the right reason.
It worked.
So that's that code for that. You only get into the else next time you check in with the app.
What do you mean?
Well, don't you have an app that checks in that will fill the database with
Yes,
something?
yeah.
Next time you fill the database with something, then it'll get into the else. Do you
Yes,
have
yeah.
that app right now?
Yeah. Do you want me to turn
Here,
it
just
on?
hit it real quick. It gave you a location, right?
Yeah, but it wasn't correct.
It's correct as long
It
as...
said undefined Stunkel at. So it wasn't giving the correct body.
Well, you're building a body there, otherwise you're building a body in here. These are outside of that, so probably what you would do is you would say define it here, fill it here. And then you have access to it. Actually, why wouldn't you just do the same thing as you did up here for body? And actually, this tells us the answer from last time. The fact that this worked even once up here means that the solution was actually this. We just never were finishing a response.
That makes sense.
But now that we're returning the body, yeah, so actually we didn't have to predefine body since it's in both of these.
So how do I use that?
Well, timestamp is this guy.
Oh.
That's the number of seconds since 1970, milliseconds since 1970. So before you concatenate on your timestamp, you're going to build your...
So I change those numbers to equal timestamp?
Well,
So
change this to be timestamp, yeah.
change that to timestamp.
And then instead of concatenating on timestamp, he'll concatenate on that date. So you'll want to move these things up there. And then can you just can you get the string version of a date? To date string. Then return the body. Okay. Nothing? Body is not defined. Oh, so it needed it outside of this. So I can say var body is equal to that. Then in here, just change it. Was an error for a different reason. Okay, try it.
Yep.
Date formatted right?
Yeah, but it doesn't have a time.
Yeah, so you have to mess with what the right format is for date to give you a time as well. So what is this? I would have thought giving date string would have given the date is a string using the ISO standard. Local time string, which is the time portion of the date. To locale string. Maybe this one. See if this does it, otherwise we'll just split it into two things for date and then the time. Then we should be good. Now, how many of you in here have ever used Heroku before? If you, are you using it for your current project, for the server? So in here, we've been writing these, C servers that we have running either on our local machine or running on Amazon Web Services. But from that perspective, it's our local machine, right? Because we're testing against it locally. Well, at some point, once you're done testing stuff locally, and you want it to be available to the rest of the world, you have to put it somewhere that makes it available to the rest of the world. So Heroku is one of those open source options. Go ahead and try it. Hopefully it gives you a better time, or gives you a time now.
They have some really cool stuff set up for people being able to deploy stuff.
Military time.
Military time? They have really, really cool stuff for what?
People being able to deploy their own apps to it pretty easily. Like for us, so we were using Braintree for payment, and we were using a Braintree example server with some of our own tweaks, and we were able to go on the GitHub page for for Braintree's example Java server, and we were able to like hit deploy, change a bunch of config variables, and then go in and make some tweaks of our own, but otherwise just release it launch.
So then you had a working server that you could test from anywhere, not just on the local network where you had access to that thing. Now, what would be the alternative? If you didn't want to use Heroku, what could you do instead of Heroku?
Host our own server.
Yeah, you could host your own server. So either, if you're here on campus, get a machine up and then convince IT to allow the IP address to be reachable off campus, which is probably not going to happen. If you can go to like a GoDaddy and get either a virtual private server or a dedicated server, pay per month for that. That's your own server that is then reachable. You can run a virtual machine on Amazon Web Services. Go ahead and try it now.
It gave me, the last one was Monday, May 7, 2018. Now it's giving me GMT.
Okay, so it doesn't like that version of it.
And military time.
So I tried to do locale string, but that gave you military time, right?
Mm-hmm. So it's giving me the date correct, but the time not so much. The last time it said 2018 5/7, so the different way that you can say the date, I think. I don't know.
UTC time, that's military time, right?
UTC is the standard, whatever over in Greenwich, England. So it's gonna be like 5 or 6 hours off here.
Oh.
It does actually run 24-hour time on top of that.
Yeah. Okay, so the last one we just did is this one, and that gave us, what was the time
It
like?
gave us Monday, May 7, 2018, military time, and then GMT plus 40
Okay.
UTC.
And local string gave us that. Let me just see. Local date string. All right, so what job then is a tool like Heroku actually solving? From a developer's perspective, if you're writing servers and things like that, what is Heroku doing for us? Why did the people from Heroku create this? Goodness of their heart. And it's not costing you a dime, is it? Yet. What's their model? Pretty similar to how GitHub works, right? For those of you who've used GitHub, GitHub is, you've never paid for GitHub, have you? Have any of you in here ever actually paid for GitHub? When would you pay for GitHub?
You were doing it commercially.
Okay, if you're doing commercially, which then translates into what?
You have code that you're selling for money that you don't want other people to see.
Yeah, you're making it a private repository.
Plug them. You
Huh.
get your free private repositories as a student anyways.
Right.
So,
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
yeah.
So if you, how does it know you're a student?
You have to like verify it with like what semester you are in school, and I think your EDU email address. I think I sent you the supplemental ones, but
Oh.
if you like apply for a certain period of time and they ask you to like verify that you'll be a student for that period of time, and then you have unlimited private repositories for that time
Okay, why do you think they're doing that?
to get students to pay for it once they graduate.
Well, not just that, but also when students graduate, where do they go? Go ahead and try, by the way. They go into the workforce, and now they're walking billboards for saying, hey, we should use GitHub for our source control. And private repositories, they deal with the backup, they deal with all this stuff. All we have to do is put our stuff up there. Nobody else can see it except us. Same thing Oracle does. If you use Oracle do we use Oracle in the database class here? We do anything with Oracle in there? You don't? Have you had the database? So Oracle's product is free for education use. It's a super, super, super expensive database otherwise, but if you use it for education use, it's free. So that when you go into the workforce, you say, hey, I know Oracle, blah, 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 and get them to spend a whole bunch of money buying Oracle.
Zoe Leslie and Stumple at 2018-5-7 at military time.
It's still military time.
Which one?
The one I just did was this. I
Okay,
separated them.
What you have to do, I think, to get and not to be military time is send in options to it.
To local time?
Or local string, either one. Local string gives you the date too. If you do if it's like Ian dash with the capital US, that might give you 12-hour. Otherwise, there is a way to do it.
Here, let's do to local string. Central time, something like that.
Yeah. If you go to developer at Mozilla, they have a whole page that has all the options.
It's what, developer.mozilla.com.
Yeah. That one. And then just like search for JavaScript to local string. Yeah, that first one there. Well, no, it should say date. There should be one that says date and then local string. Yeah. If you scroll on down, there's a whole list of parameters. 12-hour time option.
Is there a thing to set time zone?
I think there should be.
Yeah, see, the issue with this is this has to be done at the time when you're creating your date.
No, because then if you scroll on down, there's examples of it.
Oh.
To it later on. And yes, you can set the time zone as one of the options.
So something like that.
Yeah, try that first.
See what that does, yeah.
Otherwise, you can kind of like basically write a JSON object that you pass in the JavaScript object.
So let's do to locale string. Pass it that. Oh, so anyways, the question I was asking is, what's Heroku's business model? What's the purpose of making Heroku free for us rather than you hosting a dedicated server? I mean, dedicated servers have gotten virtual private servers at least have gotten fairly inexpensive, maybe $20 a month or something like that. So there might be some of you that would say, okay, I could afford $20 a month if it's like for a really good reason. But if I have a free option, you're going to almost always choose the free option, right? And if you're running your own dedicated server, your own virtual private server, now all of a sudden you're the IT support. You got to run all your backups. You have to do all these other things that deal with running your server, where you might be looking at, well, I want to focus on writing the software. So Heroku runs your server, maintains it, gives you the whatever 99.99% uptime, blah, 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 all this stuff. And it's free up to a point. I think you get so many hits before they start either slowing it down or cutting you off. And then you could add, what do they call them, dynos? You can add more dynos, which is like more processors to your thing. What did the time look like this time?
Perfect.
Looks good?
Mm-hmm.
So we should stop touching it?
Yep.
All right. So you'll need to do a pull then to get the current code, but it's all up there. All right. So really think about when you're creating real world solutions for this stuff. I mean, here we've created some mini projects, and our goal in here was kind of learning C, because that's something you might have to deal with out in the industry anyways, learning some of this interprocess communication stuff, as well as some of the networking stuff like sockets and threads and semaphores, things like this, dealing with the kind of collision or race condition type of situations. But when you actually go to deploy products in the real world, well, first of all, C isn't going to be really heavily used in a lot of modern applications, but it still might be used in some older stuff you need to support, or even still some in the gaming industry, although we're even seeing that supplanted now, right? If we would have rolled back 10 years ago, most video games you would be writing would be written in C or C++. Okay? Now they're not. Why? What's happened in the last let's call it 5 years in the gaming industry that's changed? You download a new game, Steam or something like that for your PC. Let's call it 9 out of 10 of those games starts off by saying made with either Unity or made with Unreal Engine, right? Some of them don't say that because they're paying the big premium price to not have to claim what they used to make it. Every now and then, you might have a company, for instance, like Activision, Blizzard. Parent companies, Activision, Blizzard's one of their brands. They have their own game engine, so they have their own version of kind of a Unity or own version of Unreal Engine that they use for making all their games. And there's probably has a bunch of very specialized proprietary tweaks to it that make it fast in the ways they need it to be fast. So, but the bottom line is that they spent a lot of time probably writing that in C and C++. Unity is written in C and C++, and then recompiled for multiple platforms since it's on Mac, Linux, and Windows. So they actually had to do that problem of porting, right? Because they're building a graphic user interface for multiple platforms, and they're not doing it in Java. Runs as an executable, and Java would be just too slow for some of the stuff that they're doing in real time on there. So they spent the time to port it onto multiple platforms so that people could develop games for the Unity platform regardless of what platform they were running on. And if you write a game on a Mac and want to deploy to a PC, you can do that. You just convert your project. It doesn't take any time at all. Really takes 30 seconds or something like that. So we're even seeing the use of C and C++ change today. If you're in Unreal, how many of you have used Unreal Engine before? All right, so in Unreal Engine, if you wanted to do scripting, what language do you use for scripting? Remember what language you use for scripting?
Well, technically, all your scripting is done with blueprints and
Now,
C#.
yeah, now it is. So in Unreal Engine, the scripting language is C++, but not that many people, especially those who are just starting to use Unreal Engine, use C++. They use blueprints, which is a drag and drop, graphic user interface programming thingy, right? So you're just connecting things together, making state machines, that kind of stuff, and that is for them to compete with Unity, because now you have people who are, even though Unity has a lot of C# scripting, you can create quite a bit without any scripting in Unity. So we see technology moving us farther and farther and farther away from having to use some of these older languages, even though the foundation is still in those older languages. They've just built an abstraction between us and them. But the people who are the Unity people. They still need C and C++ developers. I presume the same thing's true for a lot of the game companies that have their own proprietary engines and that kind of stuff. So under the hood, C and C++ is still the baseline. But what has Unity done? Unity's done something pretty similar to what Java's done, in that they've created a platform on which games run. So when you launch your game for a PC or for Mac or for whatever, one of the VR headsets, it's it's running as, or a mobile phone running on an ARM processor. It's the Unity platform running on that is running your game, because your game is written in terms of Unity. That makes sense? More than likely, at some point, it does get compiled to native code for performance reasons. But from a developer's perspective, you're still just writing it for the Unity ecosystem or the Unreal Engine ecosystem, as opposed to the operating system that you're on. Therefore, you don't have to recompile stuff. So we see in our development world today, we see all these products that pop up that solve micro problems in the software development lifecycle, so that as a developer, you can focus on the problem that you care about. So, you guys are working on a new business idea, right? So your focus is on business plan for that and the software that you can use to execute that business plan. You don't want to have to worry about managing your database. You don't have to worry about managing your servers, all these other things. I mean, you're going to have to pay for that one way or another. You have to pay somebody to do it, or pay for the server and your own time to do it, or you pay somebody else who has become an expert at that one thing. And we're now seeing it in all sorts of other micro areas. I mean, for a long time, it's been database, compute engine stuff, server hosting stuff. Hosting is kind of where it maybe started, right? Put your website someplace else so people can get to it. Then databases became kind of a big thing. Now we have things that are hosting servers that are not websites. They're something more than websites, or something different than HTTP server type stuff. Well, now we also have a whole bunch of services. So for instance, your app is leveraging Twilio. Why do you use Twilio?
For the texting service.
Texting service. You didn't want to have to reinvent the wheel? You didn't want to have to write all the code or whatever to and call up AT&T and Verizon and all these people and say, hey, I want to send text messages on your network. Give me access. That's a real problem, right? That she's using a third-party API called Twilio to solve. And Twilio is free or very, very, very inexpensive for you to do development, as long as you only want to send to one number. As soon as you're hooked, and as soon as you say, oh, okay, well, now I'm good to go, and now you want to be able to send it to anybody's number, you want me to pay for it on a per text basis. It's very, very cheap. It's some fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a penny per text. But if you're texting very, very often, that becomes a problem then, right? Okay, but again, they've made their niche thing there. You guys are using Braintree for billing. Why did you choose Braintree? What are some of the options? What are some of the other things you were debating between?
So we looked at Stripe, Square, or trying to figure out something else for ourselves, I guess. But I don't know, Braintree, they make it like fairly easy to be able to integrate different payment options. Like, I don't know, as opposed to just doing a card, we can also easily throw in like PayPal, Venmo, that kind of stuff.
Yep. So you decided, okay, well, people need to pay through my app. So now how am I going to pay? You can then, you can work with one of the actual transaction places like authorize.net, and you can write your own API for handling payments, which can work. They have their own API, so you're not going to become them, but maybe you can, save a percentage or something like that, because you're not using PayPal or Braintree or Stripe or one of these other Venmo, these payment processing platforms that take a cut. So instead, what are you doing? You're saying, I'll write it myself. Well, you guys are trying to deliver a product that requires something to be paid for, but you're not in the business of handling payments. That problem's been solved over and over and over and over again, right? So what do? You buy the part. Okay, when you need a pair of scissors at home, you don't build a pair of scissors. You go out and you pay for a pair of scissors. Pay $5 for the scissors, and in terms of the sum of its parts, it's maybe worth 40 cents. But you pay the $5 because somebody's already put it together for you and engineered it and sharpened it and all this other stuff. And when it wears out, I mean, I suppose there's somewhere in the world there's a scissor repair person who probably just picks up the scissors and drives over to Walmart and buys a new pair of scissors. This is going to be the next version of what's the driving service that does the food now? Uber Eats, yeah. So it's gonna be like, I don't know what's I have to come up with a name for it, but like Uber shopping is just like, you know, I need a pound of hamburger. They just like bring it to you or something like that. Would actually be pretty handy.
There are. There's like Postmates that does that where you can order groceries and everything.
Yeah. But is there like one-off errands, like Uber errands? Like they swing by and take your package to the UPS for you? Yeah, it's not far-fetched, right?
Gold mine.
Yeah, I mean, it could be. Well, I mean, Uber would have the market for it because they already have these drivers that are out there and they're looking for, what do I do when I don't have a ride? I deliver food to people. I exchange scissors for them. I can drop off their UPS packages. I guess they could maybe take a picture and send them back the receipt or whatever. That way they don't have to drive back to the house. I don't think these are bad. I don't think these are bad ideas, but we've created this this technology ecosystem where we have these micro solutions to problems that then the idea people can then bring together into their solution, and everybody gets a little cut. You know, Apple does this just with their platform. You know, the big example when the App Store when the iPad first came out is really when this started. I think I've mentioned this before, but like the Wall Street Journal. You know, Apple, as people became, started deciding they want to digest their news on iPads and smartphones, things like that, instead of getting physical newspapers, like, oh, well, why shouldn't I be able to read the Wall Street Journal on my iPad? Apple said, yeah, no problem. So Wall Street Journal puts an app up on the iPad. Everybody is, starting to use it. And then Wall Street Journal wanted people to be able to subscribe to it on the iPad. So Apple said, no problem. You just have to offer at least as good of a deal as you do on your website. And by the way, we get 30%. So now I don't remember what the percentage is, but there's a shockingly high percentage of people who initially subscribed to Wall Street Journal through the iPad. So now Apple gets 30% of Wall Street Journal's revenue because of that for each one of those people. Because Apple's handling the credit card payments and stuff like that, which is a problem that Wall Street Journal already knew how to handle, right? They're already handling credit card payments or, pull from your bank account or whatever for years and years and years. But now to get it on Apple's platform, to get it in front of their audience, they want their cut. Not a bad business. So some things to think about when you're writing, especially for those of you who've already started becoming fairly entrepreneurial. Sometimes you don't need a solution to a big problem. Sometimes you can create the solution to the small problem. Then just sell that solution over and over again for people who want to turn it into a bigger problem. Maybe it becomes the basis for your bigger problem. You have an idea for something like this, but you know it's going to need this, this, and this. Build these as one-offs that you could then license to other people, but then use them yourself for beta testing for your larger product. Some things to keep in mind with that kind of stuff. That's effectively what Square has done. I don't know who Square actually uses as their, probably Authorize.net is my guess, as their payment gateway behind the scenes. But they built a solution on top of that allows anybody to get a free little card swipe thing and use Square at, whatever, rummage sales and things like that. So it becomes a pretty good business where all they did is they spent some time writing something, came up with a little piece of equipment that scans a magnetic barcode, and they take their 1 or 2% in the middle for millions and millions and millions of transactions. It's a pretty good deal. Okay, so on Wednesday, we'll go over what's going to be on the final. Remember that the presentations for senior seminar start tomorrow and from 5 to 8, and then also Thursday from 5 to 8. So I encourage all of you to go. Make sure you review the extra credit opportunity. And then I don't know what we'll do on Friday. Try to pull some of these things together since we've been looking at some other stuff the last couple of days. All right, I will see everybody on Wednesday.